The rain smelled like iron and earth, drumming against the library windows in a rhythm that matched my thundering heart. I pressed my palm against the cold glass, watching the storm devour the last traces of twilight beyond the university grounds. Somewhere in the darkness, wolves were howling, closer than they should be, closer than was safe. My reflection stared back at me, pale and insubstantial, blonde hair pulled into a messy bun, oversized sweater drowning my small frame, dark circles under eyes that had forgotten how to sleep peacefully. I was 23 and invisible. That's what 4 years of being the scholarship girl among legacy students teaches you: how to take up less space, speak softer, exist quieter, how to become a shadow. My fingertips traced the silver pendant at my throat, the only inheritance my grandmother left me before she passed. "Compassion is not weakness, Evelyn," she used to whisper, her weathered hands cupping my face. "The strongest hearts are those brave enough to feel everything." I wished she were here now, wished she could explain why her words felt like both comfort and curse. The library was supposed to close at midnight, but Mrs. Chen had trusted me with the key months ago. "You're the only one who treats books like they're sacred," she'd said. And I'd felt seen in a way that made my chest ache. Tonight, I'd stayed late finishing my thesis on predator-prey dynamics in supernatural ecosystems. Ironic, considering I barely understood the supernatural world that existed parallel to my ordinary human one. I gathered my papers, tucking them into my worn messenger bag with careful hands. The campus was hosting some kind of summit this week. I'd overheard fragments of conversation about pack territories and ancient bloodlines, but those affairs belonged to a world I only studied from safe distances. My world was smaller: classes, work-study shifts at the library, the tiny apartment I shared with 2 roommates who barely acknowledged my existence. The howling grew louder. I froze, my hand on the library door. Through the rain-streaked glass, I could see figures moving across the quad. Not students stumbling home from parties, but purposeful shapes that moved too fluidly, too predatorily. My anthropology professor had mentioned increased tensions between wolf packs lately, something about disputed territory and a mate ceremony gone wrong. "Not your problem," I told myself firmly. "Stay in your lane." But my grandmother's voice whispered through memory. "The bravest thing you can do is care when it's easier not to." I pulled my jacket tighter and slipped out into the storm. The campus paths were empty, rain pelting my face as I hurried toward the parking lot where my ancient bicycle waited. Water soaked through my sneakers immediately, and I could hear my roommate Bridget's voice in my head. "God, Evelyn, you're so pathetic. Can't even afford a car like a normal person." Maybe she was right. Maybe I was pathetic, a human girl trying to earn a degree in a university increasingly dominated by supernatural students, pretending I belonged in a world that would never truly accept me. The attack came without warning. One moment I was alone on the path. The next I was surrounded. They emerged from the shadows like nightmares taking form. 3 massive wolves, their eyes gleaming amber in the darkness. My scream caught in my throat as strong hands grabbed me from behind. A cloth pressed over my mouth and nose. The chemical smell made my head spin, my vision blurring. "Wrong," something in me whispered. "This is wrong." "Got her," a rough voice growled. "The Alpha will be pleased. Let's move before—" "Wait!" Another voice interrupted, sharper, uncertain. "Something's off." Her scent. But the world was already fading, the rain becoming distant static. My grandmother's pendant cold against my racing heart. I tried to fight, tried to scream, but my body wouldn't obey. The last thing I registered was being lifted, carried swiftly through the storm, and the terrible realization that no one would even notice I was gone. I woke to firelight and the smell of pine. My head throbbed as consciousness returned in painful waves. I was lying on something soft. A couch, maybe. In a room that was all dark wood and stone, illuminated by a massive fireplace that cast dancing shadows across walls hung with ancient tapestries. The storm still raged outside tall windows, but here it felt muted, distant. Terror crashed through me as memory returned. The attack, the chemical smell, being taken. I tried to sit up and immediately discovered my wrists were bound, not with rope, but with some kind of leather restraints that felt uncomfortably secure. My bag was gone. My phone was gone. I was alone in a strange room that smelled like power and danger, and something wild I couldn't name. Don't panic, I ordered myself, even as panic clawed at my throat. Think, assess, survive. The room was clearly expensive. Everything from the Persian rugs to the leather furniture screamed wealth and old power. Through the windows, I could see only forest and darkness, no familiar landmarks. Wherever I was, it wasn't anywhere near campus. The door opened. I flinched back instinctively, my bound hands rising defensively as 3 men entered. The first 2 were clearly guards. Massive, dangerous-looking men with the same amber gleam in their eyes I'd seen in the wolves. But it was the 3rd man who made my breath stop. He was tall, easily 6'4", with broad shoulders that filled the doorway, and a presence that seemed to consume all the oxygen in the room. Dark hair fell to his shoulders, framing a face that was all sharp angles and brutal beauty. High cheekbones, strong jaw, a mouth that looked like it had forgotten how to smile. But it was his eyes that froze me in place. Bright gold, ancient and terrible, burning with an intelligence and power that made me feel like prey before a predator. This was an alpha, not just any alpha, something in the way the others deferred to him. The weight of authority he carried like a second skin told me exactly who he was. The Alpha King I'd heard whispered about in supernatural studies classes. The one who ruled the northern territories with absolute power. And I had been brought to him. He stared at me for a long moment, those gold eyes tracking over my face with an intensity that made me want to disappear. Then his expression shifted, confusion flickering across features that looked unused to such uncertainty. What is this? His voice was deep, rough, carrying an edge that made my survival instincts scream. One of the guards stepped forward, his face pale. Alpha King Rowan. We captured her as ordered. The girl from the university, the one who... This isn't her. The words cut like a blade. The temperature in the room seemed to drop as power rolled off him in waves that made my teeth ache. This isn't the girl who humiliated my beta's son. This isn't anyone connected to the incident. My mind raced, trying to understand. They'd taken the wrong person. This was a mistake. A terrible, potentially fatal mistake. Alpha, we were certain. The guard stammered. Blonde hair, small build, at the library like the report said. She's human. Rowan's voice dropped to something deadly quiet, which was somehow worse than shouting. He moved closer, and I pressed back into the couch, my bound hands trembling. He leaned down, his face inches from mine, and inhaled deeply, completely, utterly human. No wolf blood, no pack connections. Nothing. I found my voice, though it came out small and shaking. Please. There's been a mistake. I don't know anything about any incident. I was just leaving the library. I'm nobody. I'm just nobody, he repeated, straightening. Something flickered in those gold eyes, an emotion I couldn't read. His gaze dropped to my throat, to my grandmother's pendant, then back to my face. You're a student? Yes. I hated how my voice broke. Anthropology major. I have a thesis defense next month. I work at the library. I'm not whoever you're looking for. The silence stretched, broken only by the crackling fire and the storm outside. The guards looked terrified, as if waiting for an explosion of rage that would destroy them, but Rowan just stood there, studying me with those ancient, unreadable eyes. Finally, he turned to the guards. Leave us. Alpha. Now. They fled. And I was alone with the Alpha King, bound and helpless, in a room that suddenly felt far too small. My heart hammered against my ribs as he moved to pour himself a drink from a crystal decanter, the gesture casual despite the tension crackling in the air. What's your name? He asked without looking at me. Evelyn. It came out as barely a whisper. Evelyn Cross. Evelyn Cross. He tested the name, still not facing me. And you truly have no connection to the wolf who assaulted my beta's son at the summit gathering? I don't even know what summit you're talking about, I said honestly. I just study supernatural dynamics. I'm not part of that world. I'm nobody important. He turned then, and the look in his eyes made my breath catch. That's the second time you've called yourself nobody. He moved closer again, and I couldn't escape, couldn't run. He crouched before me, bringing himself to eye level, and the proximity made every nerve in my body scream danger. Do you believe that? That you're nobody? Tears burned behind my eyes. Exhaustion, fear, and something deeper I didn't want to name. I'm just trying to survive, I whispered. I'm just trying to graduate and build a life and not end up as collateral damage in a world that was never meant for people like me. Something shifted in his expression. His hand reached out, and I flinched, but he only brushed his fingers against my grandmother's pendant. This is old, he murmured. Very old. Where did you get it? My grandmother. She raised me. And where is she now? Dead. The word tasted like ash 3 years ago. His fingers stilled against the silver, and when he looked up at me, there was something in those gold eyes that looked almost like recognition, almost like pain. You were loved, he said quietly. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. Yes. He stood abruptly, moving to stare out the window at the storm. His broad back was rigid with tension, and I could see the conflict playing out in the set of his shoulders, the way his hands clenched and released. This is a problem, he finally said. My men took the wrong girl. Standard protocol would be to eliminate the witness. Terror flooded through me, cold and absolute. But I don't kill innocents. He turned back to face me, and the look in his eyes was complex, layered with something I couldn't understand. However, I also can't simply release you. You've seen this location. You know I sanctioned a kidnapping. You're a liability. I won't tell anyone, I said quickly, desperately. I swear, I'll forget this ever happened. I'll transfer schools, You're a terrible liar, Evelyn Cross. The hint of something that might have been amusement crossed his face. Your heart is racing. You're terrified. And yet you're still trying to negotiate, still trying to survive. That's unexpected. He paced, a caged predator working through a problem. The firelight caught in his dark hair, made his eyes glow. I watched him, my mind spinning through possibilities, all of them bad. Finally, he stopped, turned to face me fully, and when he spoke, his voice carried absolute authority. The voice of a king making a decree. I'm keeping you. My blood turned to ice. What? You're nobody, as you say. No pack connections, no powerful family to demand your return. You'll stay here in the estate, under my protection and supervision. His gold eyes held mine, intense and unwavering. You'll be safe, fed, given everything you need, but you won't leave. Not until I decide what to do with you. That's kidnapping, I breathed. That's survival, he countered. For both of us, would you prefer I follow protocol? No. God, no. I wasn't ready to die. I was 23 and invisible, and I'd barely started living. How long? I whispered. Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe, that I was already calculating, already adapting. I don't know. The honest answer was somehow worse than a lie. He moved forward, and I tensed, but he only reached down to unbind my wrists with surprisingly gentle hands. The leather fell away, leaving red marks on my pale skin. His fingers lingered for just a moment, his warmth shocking against my cold flesh. Tomorrow, we'll discuss the rules, he said quietly. Tonight, you'll sleep. You'll be given a room, clothes, anything you need. He straightened, and the Alpha King was back, all authority and cold power. But make no mistake, Evelyn Cross, you belong to me now. Wrong girl or not, you're mine to keep. He walked to the door, then paused, looking back at me with eyes that held secrets and shadows, and something that might have been loneliness. Welcome to Blackstone Estate, he said. Try not to make me regret my mercy. And then he was gone, leaving me alone with the fire and the storm, and the terrible knowledge that my invisible life had just become impossibly, dangerously visible. I didn't sleep. How could I, when every shadow in the unfamiliar room seemed to hold threats, when every creak of the ancient house made my heart leap into my throat? The bedroom they'd given me was larger than my entire apartment, all dark wood and deep greens, with a 4-poster bed that felt absurdly luxurious, and a window that overlooked endless forest. A prison with silk sheets. I'd spent hours sitting by that window, watching the storm finally break into a gray dawn, my grandmother's pendant clutched in my fist like a lifeline. Compassion is not weakness. But what good was compassion here, in a place where I'd been taken by mistake and kept by decree? What good was a soft heart when facing predators? When the knock came at my door, I nearly jumped out of my skin. "Miss Cross?" A woman's voice, soft but firm. "May I enter?" I pulled the borrowed robe tighter around myself. They'd left clothes in the dresser, all in my size, which was somehow more disturbing than comforting. Yes. The woman who entered was perhaps 50, with silver threading through her dark hair and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. She carried a breakfast tray, the smell of coffee and fresh bread, making my treacherous stomach growl despite everything. "I'm Helena," she said, setting the tray on the small table by the window. "I manage the household. I thought you might be hungry." I stared at the food, scrambled eggs, toast, fruit, orange juice, and felt tears prick my eyes. It was such a normal thing, breakfast, in a situation that was anything but normal. "Thank you," I whispered. Helena studied me with an expression that was difficult to read, not quite pity, not quite sympathy. Something more complex. "The Alpha King has requested your presence in his study at 9 o'clock. I'll return at 8:30 to help you prepare." "I don't need help." "It's not a suggestion, dear." Her voice remained kind, but there was steel underneath. "This is how things work here. You'll understand soon enough." She left, and I was alone with breakfast I didn't want and a meeting I dreaded. But survival meant eating, meant keeping my strength up, meant preparing for whatever came next. So I forced down the food, each bite tasting like ashes, and tried to formulate a plan. Think like an anthropologist, I told myself. Observe. Adapt. Find the patterns. By the time Helena returned, I'd managed to shower and was attempting to make sense of the wardrobe they'd provided. Everything was high quality. Soft sweaters, well-fitted jeans, dresses I'd never have occasion to wear. Helena guided me toward a simple outfit. Dark jeans, a cream-colored sweater, low boots. "You'll want to look presentable but not formal," she explained. Deft fingers braiding my blonde hair. "The Alpha values authenticity over pretense." "Does he value mercy?" I asked quietly. "Does he value letting innocent people go home?" Helena's hands stilled for just a moment. "The Alpha King does what he believes is necessary to protect his people. That's all any of us can do." She finished the braid, her reflection meeting mine in the mirror. "But I'll tell you something, Miss Cross. In the 30 years I've worked for this family, I've never seen him show the kind of restraint he showed last night. Usually, witnesses don't get second chances. The words should have been comforting. Instead, they made me feel like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, waiting to fall. The study was all leather and books and quiet power. Rowan stood behind a massive desk, reviewing documents with the kind of focused intensity that suggested he'd been awake for hours. Morning light streamed through tall windows, catching in his dark hair and emphasizing the sharp planes of his face. He looked different in daylight, no less dangerous, but somehow more real, more human, despite everything that proved otherwise. He looked up as I entered, those gold eyes tracking my movement with predatory precision. "Sit." It wasn't a request. I sat in the chair across from his desk, my hands folded in my lap to hide their trembling. The silence stretched, broken only by the ticking of an antique clock on the mantel. "You look like you didn't sleep," he finally said. "Forgive me if being kidnapped affects my rest," I replied, then immediately regretted the sharp tone. "Stupid, Evelyn. Don't antagonize the man who holds your life in his hands." But instead of anger, something that might have been amusement flickered across his face. "Fair enough." He set aside his documents, giving me his full attention, and the weight of that focus made me feel simultaneously seen and exposed. "Let's discuss the parameters of your situation." "My captivity, you mean, if you prefer." He leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "You'll have freedom within the estate grounds. The house, the gardens, the library. You'll take your meals in the dining hall with the rest of the household. You'll be treated with respect and courtesy. But I can't leave. No. No apology in that single word. There are guards at every exit. The forest is patrolled, and even if you manage to escape, which you won't, you'd be dead within hours. There are things in these woods far more dangerous than wolves. I believed him. God help me. I believed every word. What about my life? I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. My classes, my thesis, my job. People will notice I'm gone. Your roommates have been informed you had a family emergency and left suddenly. Your professors received notice of a medical leave. Your phone and belongings are being handled. He said it so matter-of-factly, as if erasing someone's existence was routine. As far as the world knows, Evelyn Cross needed to step away for personal reasons. The efficiency of it was terrifying. And when they expect me back, we'll address that when necessary. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. For the first time, something like frustration crossed his features. You think I planned this? You think I wanted a human girl with no connections and too much courage for her own good complicating my life? Then let me go, I pleaded. I swear on my grandmother's memory I won't tell anyone. I'll disappear, You're a terrible liar, remember? He stood, moving around the desk with that fluid predator grace. And more than that, you're curious. I can see it in your eyes. You study supernatural dynamics. Do you really think you could walk away from this without trying to understand, to analyze, to know? He was right, and I hated him for it. Even now, terrified and trapped, part of me was cataloging details. The way power seemed to radiate from him, the ancient quality to his eyes, the complicated emotions that flickered beneath his controlled exterior. What do you want from me? I whispered. He stopped in front of me, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his gaze. Honestly, I don't know yet. His voice was quieter now, almost contemplative. You're an anomaly. A mistake that somehow doesn't feel like a mistake. Before I could process that statement, the study door burst open. A young man strode in, mid-20s, with the same amber eyes as the guards, but a face that was all boyish charm and barely controlled energy. Rowan, we need to talk about the territory. He stopped short, seeing me. Who's this? None of your concern, Cole. Rowan's voice carried warning, but Cole was already circling me like I was a curious puzzle, his nose wrinkling as he scented the air. She's human. Why is there a human in your study? His eyes widened. Oh my God, is this about the kidnapping? They grabbed the wrong girl, didn't they? That's hilarious. Cole. The single word cracked like a whip. The younger man sobered immediately, though curiosity still danced in his eyes. Sorry, but seriously, what's the plan? The beta is demanding answers about the actual target, and the council is asking questions about our security protocols. I'll handle the council. And her? Cole gestured at me. What do we tell people about the random human in the Alpha King's private wing? The question hung in the air. I watched Rowan's jaw tighten, watched him weigh options I couldn't guess. She's under my protection, he finally said. That's all anyone needs to know. Cole whistled low. That's going to raise more questions than it answers, brother. Brother. So this was family. I filed that information away. Another piece of the puzzle. Then let them question, Rowan said coldly. My word is law in this territory. Your word is law, but your decisions affect all of us. A new voice, female and sharp as glass. A woman appeared in the doorway, late 30s, beautiful in a severe way, with dark hair pulled back and eyes that assessed me like a threat. Who is she, Rowan? And why does she smell like fear and the forest near campus? Meredith. Rowan's tone suggested this was a conversation he didn't want. This is a private matter. Nothing is private when it affects pack security. Meredith moved into the room, her presence commanding despite being smaller than the men. I'm head of security, Miss Cross, I supplied quietly. Evelyn Cross. Miss Cross was brought here by mistake, Rowan said, before Meredith could interrogate further. She's staying as my guest until the situation is resolved. Guest. Meredith's laugh was bitter. Is that what we're calling hostages now? Careful, Rowan warned. and the temperature seemed to drop. But Meredith didn't back down. The pack deserves transparency. We deserve to know why you're harboring a human, especially now, with tensions so high. The other alphas are already questioning your judgment after the summit incident. Enough. Power rolled off Rowan in waves, making my teeth ache and my survival instincts scream. Even Cole and Meredith, clearly powerful themselves, took an involuntary step back. I am Alpha King. My decisions are not subject to committee approval. The silence was thick with tension. I pressed back in my chair, trying to make myself smaller, trying to disappear. This was pack politics. Power dynamics I only understood theoretically. Being caught in the middle of it felt like standing in the path of an avalanche. Meredith's eyes found mine, cold and calculating. I hope you're worth the trouble you're causing, little human. She left, her exit somehow more threatening than her presence. Cole lingered, his earlier playfulness subdued. She's not wrong, you know. Keeping her here without explanation is going to cause problems. I know. Rowan's voice was tired suddenly, and I glimpsed the weight he carried. Ruler, protector, king. But the alternative is worse. Is it? Cole glanced at me, something like sympathy in his gaze. Or are you just making this more complicated than it needs to be? He left too, and I was alone with Rowan again. The morning light seemed harsher now, illuminating all the ways the situation was impossible. I'm sorry, I said quietly. He looked at me sharply. For what? For being the wrong girl, for complicating your life, for... My voice broke. For not being someone who could just disappear without causing problems. Something shifted in his expression, something that looked almost like pain. He moved closer, crouching before my chair as he had last night, bringing those ancient gold eyes level with mine. Don't apologize for existing, Evelyn. His voice was rough, intense. Don't ever make yourself smaller to make others more comfortable. That's not... He stopped, seeming to struggle with words. That's not who you should be. You don't even know me. No, he agreed, but I'm beginning to. His hand reached out, and this time I didn't flinch as his fingers brushed the pendant at my throat. This symbol, he murmured. It's a protection charm. Very old magic. Your grandmother knew things, I think. She never spoke about it, I whispered. She just said it would keep me safe. And yet here you are. Maybe it did keep me safe, I said quietly. Maybe being the wrong girl is the only reason I'm still alive. His eyes met mine, and something passed between us, understanding, recognition. Something I couldn't name but felt in my bones. For just a moment, he wasn't the Alpha King, and I wasn't his captive. We were just two people carrying wounds we didn't know how to heal. Then the moment shattered. He stood abruptly, distance slamming back into place. Helena will show you to the library, he said, his voice formal again. You mentioned a thesis. You're welcome to continue your work. I'll have your research materials sent from campus. Why? I asked. Why be kind when you're keeping me prisoner? He paused at the door, his back to me. Because you were right last night. You're just trying to survive, just trying to build a life. He looked back over his shoulder, and the loneliness in his eyes was staggering. Maybe I remember what that feels like. Then he was gone, and I was left alone in the study with more questions than answers and the terrible realization that my captor was far more complicated than any predator I'd studied. And somehow, that made everything more dangerous. 3 days passed like a strange dream. The library became my sanctuary. A vast room on the estate's second floor, with floor-to-ceiling shelves, leather chairs worn soft with age, and windows that overlooked the gardens. Helena had been true to Rowan's word. My research materials arrived the second day, along with my laptop and notes, everything except my phone, of course. That remained confiscated, another reminder that this gilded cage was still a cage, but I couldn't deny the strange peace I found among the books. I'd established a routine, clinging to structure the way drowning people cling to driftwood, mornings in the library, working on my thesis about territorial disputes and pack hierarchies. Ironic, given my current situation. Afternoons exploring the gardens with Helena, who seemed determined to make my captivity as comfortable as possible. Evenings were harder. Dinner in the vast dining hall with Cole, Meredith, and various pack members who regarded me with everything from curiosity to thinly veiled hostility. Rowan rarely joined these meals. I told myself I wasn't disappointed by his absence. I was lying. Because despite everything, the kidnapping, the imprisonment, the uncertainty, I couldn't stop thinking about him, about the loneliness in his gold eyes, the careful control that suggested a man holding back something vast and dangerous, the moments when his facade cracked, and I glimpsed the person beneath the king. "You're staring at nothing again," Cole's voice interrupted my thoughts. I blinked, focusing on the present. It was late afternoon, and I'd been so lost in thought I hadn't noticed him enter the library. He threw himself into the chair across from mine with the casual grace of someone utterly comfortable in his own skin. "Just thinking," I said, "about escape routes." His tone was light, teasing, but I caught the serious undertone. Would it matter if I was? I closed my laptop, studying him. "You'd stop me." "Probably." He grinned, unrepentant. "But I'd feel bad about it. Does that count for anything?" Despite myself, I smiled. Cole had been the closest thing to a friend these past days, checking in on me, making jokes to cut through the tension, treating me like a person rather than a problem. "Why are you being kind to me? Why wouldn't I be?" He tilted his head, genuine confusion in his amber eyes. "You didn't ask to be here. You're not a threat. And you make my brother act almost human, which is honestly refreshing. I don't—" I started to protest, but he waved me off. "Please." "He's been brooding around here for years, all duty and responsibility and no life whatsoever. Then you show up, and suddenly he's having your research materials delivered and making sure you're comfortable. It's progress. He kidnapped me, Cole. Technically, his men kidnapped you. He just didn't fix the mistake in the traditional way." Cole's expression sobered. "I know it's not ideal, but Rowan's not the monster you might think he is." "Then what is he?" Cole was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "Someone who lost everything once and refuses to risk it again. Someone who carries the weight of an entire people on his shoulders and forgets he's allowed to be more than his responsibilities." He met my eyes. "Someone who might need a friend as much as you do." Before I could respond, Meredith appeared in the doorway, her severe beauty sharp in the afternoon light. "Cole, the patrol reports are ready." "And you?" Her gaze fixed on me, cold and assessing. "The Alpha King wants to see you in the gardens." My heart jumped, anxiety and something else I wouldn't name flooding through me. "Why?" "Do I look like his secretary?" Meredith's tone was sharp. "He wants you. Go." Cole gave me an encouraging nod as I stood, smoothing down my sweater with nervous hands. The walk through the estate's hallways felt endless, my footsteps echoing on polished wood floors. Through windows, I could see the gardens, manicured paths winding between autumn flower beds, stone benches positioned for contemplation, and beyond it all, the wild forest that marked the boundary of my prison. I found him near the garden's edge, standing before a small memorial made of white stone. He didn't turn as I approached, though I knew he'd heard me. His shoulders tensed slightly, acknowledging my presence. "You wanted to see me?" My voice came out softer than intended. "I thought you might want fresh air." He still didn't look at me, his gaze fixed on the memorial. "Helena says you spend all your time in the library. It's familiar. Safe. Is anywhere truly safe when you're a captive?" The question hung between us, rhetorical and weighted. I moved closer, reading the inscription on the stone. "For those we've lost. May the moon light their path." "Who were they?" I asked quietly. Finally, he turned to face me. The afternoon sun caught in his dark hair, softened the harsh planes of his face. He looked tired, I realized. Beneath the power and control, exhausted. My parents, my younger sister, most of my pack's leadership. His voice was carefully neutral, as if discussing something that happened to someone else. 6 years ago. My breath caught. What happened? War. The single word contained multitudes. Another alpha decided our territory should be his. He looked back at the memorial, but the cost was everything. Without thinking, I moved closer, standing beside him before the white stone. My grandmother's words whispered through memory. "The strongest hearts are those brave enough to feel everything." "I lost my parents when I was 10, I said quietly. Car accident. My grandmother raised me after that. I touched my pendant. She died 3 years ago, cancer. Sometimes I wonder if I know how to be anything except alone. He turned to look at me then, really look at me, and something in his gold eyes made my heart stutter. You're not alone now. I'm a prisoner. You're under my protection. He faced me fully, and the intensity of his focus made me feel pinned, exposed. There's a difference, Evelyn, is there? I met his gaze, refusing to look away despite every instinct screaming at me to be small, to be safe. Because from where I'm standing, it feels like semantics. You're angry. He sounded almost surprised. Of course I'm angry. The words burst out before I could stop them. I'm furious. I'm terrified. I had a life, Rowan. Small and ordinary, and maybe not very important, but it was mine. And it was taken from me because someone made a mistake. And now I'm here in this beautiful prison with a king who keeps me but won't tell me why. And My voice cracked. I don't know how to be this person, the captive, the anomaly. I only know how to be invisible. Silence fell, broken only by the wind through the garden and the distant cry of birds. I expected anger, maybe dismissal. Instead, when he spoke, his voice was raw with something that sounded like understanding. I know what it is to have your life torn away, he said quietly. To have every choice taken, every path closed except the one chosen for you. When they died, my family, I was 25 years old and suddenly responsible for thousands of lives. No time to grieve. No space to be anything except what they needed me to be. He paused, and when his eyes met mine again, the vulnerability there was staggering. I've been invisible too, Evelyn, just in a different way. A king who's really just a man pretending he knows what he's doing. The honesty of it struck something deep in my chest. Here, in the fading afternoon light, we were just two people carrying grief and loneliness, and the weight of expectations neither of us had asked for. Why keep me? I whispered. The real reason. He was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, because when I looked at you that first night, terrified and bound and still trying to negotiate for your life, I saw something I'd forgotten existed. Courage that wasn't about power or strength. Compassion that persisted despite fear. He took a step closer, and my breath caught. Because you're the first person in 6 years who's looked at me and seen a man, not just an alpha king. And He stopped, jaw tightening as if the words were being pulled from somewhere deep. I'm tired of being alone. My heart thundered in my chest. This was dangerous. More dangerous than the kidnapping. More threatening than any physical harm. This was the kind of connection that could destroy you if it went wrong. I can't be what you need, I said, though my voice shook. I'm human. I don't belong in your world. Maybe that's exactly why you do belong. His hand lifted, hesitating, then brushed a strand of blonde hair from my face with devastating gentleness. Maybe I need someone who sees the world differently, who reminds me that power and protocol aren't everything. His touch lingered, fingers trailing along my jaw, and I should have stepped back. Should have maintained distance. Instead, I found myself leaning into the warmth of his hand, my eyes closing for just a moment. When I opened them, his face was closer, his gold eyes searching mine for something I wasn't sure I could give. This is insane, I breathed. Probably. A hint of a smile touched his lips. The first real smile I'd seen from him, but most worthwhile things are. The moment stretched, fragile and electric. Then, from somewhere in the estate, voices rose in alarm. Rowan stepped back immediately, the king slamming back into place, all business and authority. Stay here, he commanded, already moving toward the house. What's wrong? I don't know yet. He paused at the garden entrance, looking back. But Evelyn, don't go into the forest. No matter what happens, stay in the gardens where the wards are strongest. Then he was gone, moving with predatory speed that reminded me exactly what he was. I stood alone in the garden, my hand rising to touch where his fingers had been, my heart racing with fear and something far more complicated. Cole appeared moments later, his usual playfulness replaced by serious concern. Come on, he said, taking my arm gently. We need to get you inside. What's happening? Probably nothing, but there have been Incidents. Other packs testing our borders, looking for weaknesses. He guided me toward the house, his body positioned protectively. Rowan's enemies see him as vulnerable right now. They're wrong, but they don't know that yet. Vulnerable how? Cole glanced at me, something knowing in his amber eyes. Because he cares about something beyond duty now. And caring is always a weakness someone will try to exploit. We reached the house just as Rowan emerged with Meredith and several guards. His face was grim, that cold mask of authority firmly in place. But when his eyes found me, something flickered. Relief, maybe, or something deeper. False alarm, he announced, though the tension in his shoulders suggested otherwise. But we're doubling patrols. Meredith, coordinate with the border guards. Cole, check the ward stones. Orders given, people scattering to obey. But Rowan's gaze stayed on me, holding me in place with its intensity. You followed instructions, he said, moving closer. You told me to stay in the gardens. I lifted my chin. I'm not stupid enough to ignore warnings about supernatural dangers. No. His voice dropped lower, intimate despite the people around us. You're not stupid at all. You're... He stopped, seeming to think better of whatever he'd been about to say. Get some rest. Tomorrow might be... complicated. Tomorrow? But he was already walking away, shoulders squared against whatever burden he carried. Helena appeared at my elbow, her kind face worried. Come, dear. Let's get you settled for the evening. But as I followed her inside, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. That the conversation in the garden had opened a door neither of us could close. And that whatever complications tomorrow brought, they would test us both in ways we weren't prepared for. That night, I stood at my window watching the patrols move through the darkness, and for the first time since arriving, I wasn't sure if I wanted to escape anymore. That realization terrified me more than any kidnapping ever could. The attack came 3 nights later, just before dawn. I woke to the sound of howling, not the distant, mournful calls I'd grown accustomed to, but close, vicious, filled with rage and violence. My heart slammed against my ribs as I stumbled from bed, rushing to the window. The grounds were chaos, wolves everywhere, massive shapes moving with deadly purpose, the clash of bodies and the terrible sounds of conflict. War had come to Blackstone Estate. My door burst open and I spun, terror flooding through me, but it was only Cole. His face was grim, blood already spattering his clothes. We need to move you to the safe room, now. What's happening? The Crescent Pack. They've been planning this for weeks, we just didn't know when. He grabbed my arm, pulling me into the hallway where other household members were being herded by guards. Helena was there, her face pale but composed, organizing people with quiet efficiency. Where's Rowan? I asked, resisting Cole's pull. Fighting. Where do you think? Cole's voice was sharp with stress. He's the Alpha King, Evelyn. This is what he does. But all I could think about was the vulnerability I'd seen in the garden, the loneliness in his gold eyes, the way he'd touched my face like I was something precious. The idea of him out there, facing danger, made something fierce and protective roar to life in my chest. The safe room is in the basement, Cole was saying, steering me toward a hidden door. It's warded, reinforced. You'll be secure there until... An explosion rocked the house, windows shattered, and someone screamed. Cole shoved me behind him as 3 massive wolves burst through the ruined wall, their eyes gleaming with hostile intent. These weren't like the wolves I'd seen around the estate. These were bigger, meaner, their fur matted and their scars visible even in animal form. Go! Cole roared at me, shifting mid-leap into a golden-brown wolf that met the attackers with savage grace. I ran. The basement stairs were chaos, people pushing, shoving, fear making everyone desperate. I was swept along in the tide, my small frame buffeted by larger bodies. We poured into the safe room, a massive underground chamber that looked like it had been carved from living stone. Wards glowed faintly on the walls, pulsing with protective magic. Helena found me in the crowd, pulling me into a corner. Stay close, dear. This will be over soon. But hours passed, and it wasn't over. We could hear the fighting above, the crashes, the howls, the terrible sounds of violence. Children were crying, held by terrified parents. Some of the adults looked ready to shift and join the battle, held back only by others counseling patience. I sat against the cold stone wall, my grandmother's pendant clutched in my fist, and thought about Rowan out there. Please. I prayed to whatever might be listening. Please let him be okay. This is his fault, you know? The voice came from my left, a young woman with sharp features and hostile eyes. The Alpha Kings. If he'd been stronger, shown more force after the summit incident, they wouldn't have dared attack. That's not fair, I said before I could stop myself. She turned on me, recognition flashing across her face. You're the human, the one he's keeping locked up here like some kind of pet. Her lip curled. You don't know anything about our world or what makes a real alpha. I know he's fighting for all of you right now, I shot back, surprising myself with the vehemence in my voice. I know he carries the weight of every life in this pack and never complains. I know he's— What? Tell me, little human, what is he to you? I didn't have an answer. Or rather, I had too many answers, none of which I was ready to speak aloud. The woman laughed, bitter and sharp. That's what I thought. You're just another complication he doesn't need. Another weakness his enemies will exploit. Her words echoed what Cole had said, what I'd feared myself. But before I could respond, the safe room door exploded inward. Screams erupted as wolves poured in. Not our wolves, but Crescent pack attackers who'd somehow breached the wards. Panic turned the safe room into chaos. Guards who'd stayed behind to protect us shifted and engaged, but we were outnumbered. I saw Helena go down, struck by a massive gray wolf, and something in me snapped. The strongest hearts are those brave enough to feel everything. I didn't think. I just moved. My hands found a fallen guard's silver blade. Heavy, awkward in my untrained grip. The gray wolf was advancing on Helena's unconscious form, jaws open, and I threw myself between them. The blade came up in a clumsy arc that should never have connected, but desperation gave it force. The wolf yelped, recoiling, and I stood there shaking, holding a weapon I barely knew how to use, protecting a woman who'd shown me kindness in this nightmare. Back off, I heard myself say, my voice trembling but determined. I'm not going to let you hurt anyone else. The wolf, a man really, I had to remember that, shifted back into human form. He was massive, scarred, with cold eyes that assessed me like prey. The human has teeth, he said, almost amused. How unexpected. Others were noticing now, the fighting pausing as attention turned to the spectacle of a small human girl standing against a warrior twice her size. I saw calculation in the man's eyes, saw him recognize what I was to this pack. You're the Alpha King's pet, he said slowly. The one everyone's been whispering about. I'm not. He keeps you close, protected. A cruel smile spread across his face. That makes you valuable. He moved fast, too fast for me to react. His hand closed around my throat, lifting me off my feet. The blade fell from my grip as I clawed at his arm, unable to breathe. Spots danced in my vision. Tell Rowan, he called out to the watching crowd, that we have something he wants. If he values this human's life, he'll— He never finished the sentence. Rowan hit him like a force of nature, all lethal grace and absolute fury. They went down in a tangle of violence, and I fell hard, gasping for air. Through watering eyes, I saw Rowan in his wolf form, massive and black as midnight, bigger than any other wolf I'd seen, his gold eyes blazing with rage. The fight was brutal and brief. The Crescent wolf didn't stand a chance. When it was over, Rowan shifted back to human form, kneeling beside me. His hands were gentle despite the violence still radiating from him, checking my throat where bruises were already forming. Evelyn, look at me. I met his gold eyes, saw the fear there beneath the fury. I'm okay, I croaked. Helena, check Helena. She's alive. They're helping her. His hands moved to cup my face, and they were shaking. You could have been gone, if I'd been seconds later, but you weren't. I reached up, my hand covering his. You came. Always. The word was fierce, absolute. I will always come for you. Around us, the safe room was being secured. The remaining Crescent wolves were being subdued. Meredith appeared, blood-spattered but alive. Her eyes widening as she saw Rowan kneeling beside me with such naked emotion on his face. "The estate is secure," she reported. "We've driven them back. Casualties on both sides, but—" She hesitated. "We held." "Because of him," I said, my voice still rough. I looked up at Meredith, then at the gathered pack members who were watching us. "Because your Alpha King fought for you. Because he's stronger than any of you give him credit for." Rowan's eyes met mine, something complicated passing through them. "You defended Helena," he said quietly. "You could have hidden, but you stood and fought. She was kind to me. It seemed like enough of an explanation. And I couldn't just watch people get hurt." "No," he murmured, helping me to my feet with careful hands. "You couldn't. Because compassion isn't your weakness, Evelyn Cross. It's your strength." The words hit me like a revelation, turning my grandmother's teaching into something I could finally understand. Not compassion, despite fear, but compassion because of fear, choosing to care even when it was dangerous. Cole appeared, human again, and supporting a limping pack member. "We need to do a full count, secure the perimeter, tend to the wounded." His eyes moved between Rowan and me, something knowing in his expression. "But first, maybe get your human to the infirmary. That bruising needs attention." "I can walk," I protested, but Rowan simply lifted me into his arms. "I know you can," he said, "but you don't have to." He carried me through the destroyed estate, and I was aware of every eye following us, the pack members seeing their Alpha King cradling a human girl with a tenderness that contradicted everything they thought they knew about strength and power. Let them see, I thought. Let them understand that there were different kinds of strength. The infirmary was chaos, wounded being tended by harried healers. But Rowan took me to a private room, setting me down on an examination table with a gentleness that made my chest ache. A healer came, checked my throat, applied some kind of cool salve that immediately eased the pain. "She'll be fine," the healer said. "Bruising will fade in a few days. She's lucky." When we were alone, Rowan stood at the window, his back to me, shoulders rigid with tension. Dawn was breaking, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, illuminating the damage to the estate grounds. "I failed you," he said quietly. "My enemies breached my wards, invaded my home, put their hands on you. That's—" His voice broke slightly. "That's unacceptable. You didn't fail." I slid off the table, moving to stand beside him. "You protected everyone. You won." "At what cost?" He turned to face me, and the anguish in his gold eyes was raw. "They knew, Evelyn. They knew you mattered to me, and they used that. They'll use it again. Then let them." The words surprised us both. "I'm not asking to be kept in a cage for my own safety. I'm asking—" I stopped, realizing what I was about to say, the weight of it. "I'm asking to choose this, to stay. Not as a prisoner, but as someone who belongs here." "You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying." I stepped closer, my hand finding his. "I was invisible before, Rowan. I was going through the motions of a life that never quite fit. And yes, being taken was terrifying. Being kept was infuriating. But these past weeks," my voice softened, "I've felt more alive, more seen than I ever did in my old life. You see me. Cole sees me. Even Meredith's hostility acknowledges I exist. Evelyn—" "I'm choosing this," I interrupted, squeezing his hand. "I'm choosing you. Not because I'm captive, but because when I stood in that safe room with a blade I barely knew how to hold, all I could think was that I needed you to be safe. That the world needed you in it, that I needed you in it." He stared at me like I'd spoken in a foreign language, like he couldn't quite believe what he was hearing. Then his hands came up to frame my face, his touch reverent. "You're the bravest person I've ever met," he whispered. "And I don't deserve you. Maybe not." I smiled despite everything. "But you're stuck with me anyway. Promise?" The vulnerability in that single word broke something open in my chest. "Promise." He kissed me then, soft and careful despite the violence and chaos of the night. It tasted like dawn, and new beginnings, and the terrifying courage it takes to choose love, when it would be safer to choose nothing at all. His arms came around me, holding me close, and I melted into the embrace, feeling truly safe for the first time since this whole nightmare began. When we finally broke apart, his forehead rested against mine, both of us breathing hard. "The pack won't understand," he murmured. "There will be resistance to a human. Then we'll face it together." I pulled back enough to meet his eyes. "I'm not afraid of your world anymore, Rowan. I'm only afraid of going back to being invisible." A real smile crossed his face, the second one I'd seen, and twice as devastating as the first. "You could never be invisible. Not to me." Outside, the sun fully rose over Blackstone Estate, illuminating damage and triumph in equal measure. There would be consequences to face, wounds to heal, political complications to navigate. But standing there in Rowan's arms, I finally understood what my grandmother had tried to teach me. Compassion wasn't weakness, love wasn't surrender. Sometimes, the bravest thing you could do was choose to stay. The council arrived 2 weeks after the attack, and with them came judgment. I stood beside Rowan in the great hall, a massive room I'd never seen before, all vaulted ceilings and stone pillars that spoke of age and power. Pack members lined the walls, their eyes tracking every movement. Meredith stood to Rowan's left, her expression unreadable. Cole flanked his right, offering me an encouraging nod when our eyes met. The council was composed of 5 elder alphas, representatives from the major territories. They sat in high-backed chairs arranged in a semicircle, their combined authority making the air feel thick and oppressive. The eldest, a woman with silver hair and eyes like chips of ice, spoke first. "Alpha King Rowan," she said, her voice carrying through the hall. "We've come to address the matter of the human." "Her name is Evelyn Cross," Rowan replied, his tone respectful but firm. "And she is under my protection." Protection. Another council member, a scarred man with gray threading his temples, leaned forward. "Is that what we're calling it? You keep a human in your private estate, unmarked, unclaimed by any legitimate bond. Your enemies used her as leverage. She represents a security risk and a political complication we cannot afford." Murmurs rippled through the assembled pack. I kept my chin up, refusing to show the fear churning in my stomach. We'd known this was coming. The attack had forced the issue into the open, and now we had to face it. "Evelyn was brought here by mistake," Rowan said, "but she has proven herself worthy of her place among us. She defended our people during the attack. She showed courage and compassion that many wolves lack." "Noble words," the silver-haired woman said dryly. "But sentiment doesn't change reality. She's human, Alpha King. She will always be vulnerable, always be a target, unless—" She paused, her ice-chip eyes fixing on me. "Unless you intend to claim her formally. Make her your mate and future queen." The hall erupted. Voices rose in protest and support, the pack divided. I felt Rowan tense beside me, his power rolling out in waves that demanded silence. When the room quieted, he spoke with the authority of a king. "That decision," he said carefully, "belongs to Evelyn as much as to me." All eyes turned to me. The weight of their attention was crushing, hundreds of supernatural beings waiting to hear what the small human girl would say. Part of me wanted to retreat into old habits, to make myself smaller, to disappear, but I'd promised I wouldn't be invisible anymore. "I know what many of you think," I said, and I was proud that my voice didn't shake. "You think I'm weak because I'm human, that I'm a liability, a mistake that should be corrected." I looked around the hall, meeting eyes that ranged from curious to hostile. "And maybe you're right about some of that. I'll never have your strength or your speed. I'll never shift or run with the pack under the full moon." I felt Rowan shift beside me, but I continued. "But I've learned something these past weeks. Strength isn't just physical. Courage isn't just fighting. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose compassion when violence would be easier. Choose understanding when judgment would be simpler." My hand found my grandmother's pendant. My grandmother taught me that the strongest hearts are those brave enough to feel everything, and I think your Alpha King has one of the strongest hearts I've ever known. I turned to Rowan then, seeing the emotion in his gold eyes, the careful hope he was trying to hide. He lost everything and kept protecting people anyway, I continued. He carries the weight of thousands of lives and never asks for help. He's lonely and tired and doing his best, and he deserves— My voice caught. He deserves someone who sees all of that, who chooses to stay not because they have to, but because they want to. And do you, the silver-haired council member asked, want to stay? Yes. The word was simple. Absolute. I choose him. I choose this pack. I choose a life where I'm seen and valued, even if it's dangerous. Even if it's complicated. I looked back at Rowan. If he'll have me. The silence was deafening. Then Rowan's hand found mine, his fingers intertwining with my smaller ones. And when he spoke, his voice carried through the hall with ringing clarity. Evelyn Cross is my chosen mate, he declared. She will be my queen, my partner, my equal in all things. And anyone who threatens her threatens me. Anyone who harms her will answer to me. Power rolled off him in waves, making the very air vibrate. Is that clear enough? The council members exchanged glances. Finally, the silver-haired woman smiled, small but genuine. Clear enough, Alpha King. The council recognizes your claim. She stood, and the others followed. May your union bring strength to both of you. As they filed out, the pack erupted into conversation. Some looked pleased, others uncertain, a few openly hostile. But Meredith surprised me by stepping forward, her severe face softening slightly. I still think you're a complication, she said bluntly. But you're a brave one, and maybe that's what he needs. She glanced at Rowan. What we all need. Cole was grinning like a fool. Called it, he whispered to me. Totally called it. Helena appeared with tears in her eyes, pulling me into a gentle hug. Welcome home, dear girl. Home. The word settled into my chest like a key finding its lock. The bonding ceremony took place under the full moon 3 nights later. The pack gathered in a clearing deep in the forest, surrounded by ancient trees that had witnessed countless such ceremonies. Torches lit the space, casting golden light that danced across expectant faces. I wore a dress Helena had helped me choose, simple white, flowing, with my blonde hair loose around my shoulders and my grandmother's pendant at my throat. Rowan met me at the center of the clearing, devastating in his formal attire, his gold eyes glowing in the moonlight. An elder performed the ritual, words in a language I didn't understand but felt in my bones. Ancient promises, sacred bonds. When it came time, Rowan took my hands in his. I was alone, he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the clearing. I was a king without a kingdom, protecting people without feeling connected to them. Then you came into my life, by mistake, by chance, by fate. And you reminded me what it means to be human beneath the power, what it means to care, to hope. Tears streamed down my face as he continued. You are my heart, Evelyn Cross. My courage when I forget how to be brave. My compassion when I forget how to be kind. And I promise, on the moon and the stars and everything I am, I will protect you, honor you, love you, for as long as I live. My turn. I looked up at him, this powerful being who'd chosen me, who'd seen past my invisibility to something worth keeping. I was lost, I said. I was surviving but not living, existing but not thriving. Then you kidnapped me. Laughter rippled through the crowd, and somehow, in being captured, I found freedom. Freedom to be more than I thought I could be, to be seen, to be valued, to matter. I squeezed his hands, pouring everything I felt into my words. You are my anchor, Rowan. My home in a world I'm still learning to understand. And I promise, on my grandmother's memory and the strength she taught me, I will stand beside you, support you, love you, through everything that comes. The elder bound our hands with a silver cord, speaking words of blessing. Magic shimmered in the air. I could feel it, warm and bright, sealing our bond. When it was done, Rowan pulled me close and kissed me deeply, and the pack howled their approval to the moon. Months passed, seasons turned, and Blackstone Estate transformed. My thesis was completed, remotely, with special accommodations arranged through channels I didn't entirely understand. I graduated with honors, my degree earned even if the ceremony was missed. It didn't matter. I had a new purpose now. I'd become a bridge between worlds, helping visiting humans understand pack dynamics, advising on supernatural human relations, using my anthropology background in ways I'd never imagined. The pack learned to accept me, slowly but surely. Some remained wary, but most came to see what Rowan had seen. That different didn't mean weak. Cole became my closest friend, his humor and loyalty a constant source of joy. Meredith thawed incrementally, even smiling at me once, which Cole insisted was basically a declaration of eternal friendship. Helena doted on me like the grandmother I'd lost, teaching me pack history and customs. And Rowan. Rowan was everything. My partner, my love, my home. We learned each other slowly, his past traumas and how to comfort them, my insecurities and how to soothe them. He taught me about pack politics and supernatural law. I taught him about human resilience and the power of chosen family. Some nights I still woke from nightmares about that first terrifying night. But now, Rowan was there, pulling me close, reminding me I was safe, that I was chosen, that I belonged. On the anniversary of the day I was taken, Rowan found me in the garden by the memorial stone. I'd brought flowers, white roses for his family, and a small bouquet I placed beside them for my grandmother. "Thank you," I whispered to the stone, to the memory of the woman who'd raised me, for teaching me to be brave, for the pendant that protected me, for everything. Rowan's arms came around me from behind, his chin resting on my head. "She'd be proud of you." "I hope so." I leaned back into his warmth. "I hope she knows I found my place." "You made your place," he corrected gently. "That's different. More powerful." We stood there as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. In the distance I could hear the pack, laughter from the house, children playing, life continuing in all its messy, beautiful complexity. A year ago I'd been invisible. A scholarship girl trying to survive in a world that barely acknowledged her existence. Then I'd been taken by mistake, kept by choice, and transformed by love into someone I'd never imagined becoming. Queen of the Northern Territories, mate to an alpha king, bridge between worlds. But more than any title, I was simply Evelyn, seen, valued, and finally, completely home. "No regrets?" Rowan asked softly. I turned in his arms, looking up at the man who'd kept me when he should have let me go, who'd loved me when it would have been easier not to. My fingers found his face, tracing the strong lines I'd memorized. "Not a single one," I said. And as he kissed me there in the garden, surrounded by memories of the past and promises of the future, I knew with absolute certainty. Sometimes the worst mistakes lead to the best destinies. Sometimes being the wrong girl is exactly right. The moon rose over Blackstone Estate, full and bright, and somewhere in the forest, wolves began to sing. I'd never run with them under that moon. I would always be human, always be different. But I'd found my pack anyway, and that was more than enough. It was everything.